Today, I will be coaching Ludwig in League of Legends. Now, you guys may know who Ludwig is. He's a streamer and YouTuber, and he does all of this on YouTube these days. But you may not necessarily know him for playing League of Legends or for playing mini games at all. He has been known to, dive into video games from time to time, and he'll play like Among Us and stuff like that with friends. But he's never really been known for playing games at a high level. That's not why he's popular. He's a funny, charismatic guy that plays with a lot of friends, and he's a big name because of it. However, Ludwig has kind of been tied into the League of Legends scene as of recently. As far back as July of this year, he was thrown into this event by Mr. Beast. It was a big event with Mr. Beast, Ludwig, Ninja, Tyler1, Double F, a bunch of big name guys, and they all played together on the stage. And instead of showing you guys some of the gameplay to let you know how that went, I'll just let Tyler1 show you guys how he felt about Ludwig.
Has a great time playing League with you. Hope we play again sometime. Go fuck yourself. You stupid bitch-ass motherfucker. You are one of the worst League players I have ever seen in my entire life. And I've played 30,000 games with straight shooters. I've played against AI bots for like 5,000 games. And every single AI beginner bot I've played in is 5 times the player you are at your peak, bro. I'm not kidding. You are garbage, and you cost me my reputation, you piece of shit.
The spit there really says everything that you could possibly need to know about how bad Ludwig performed in this tournament. And I understand that Tyler1 is a bit of a, he is a bit of a performer. He has this kind of act that he puts on to put on a show from time to time. But I could say from personal experience, I have played with Tyler1. I know how he kind of communicates with his teammates, and he may banter from time to time, but he never once said something like this. So the fact that he was willing to go this far to insult Ludwig, this is a little bit more than just banter. This is him really sharing his opinion and letting Ludwig know just how bad he played in this tournament. So Ludwig actually came out with a video where he explained how he got dragged into this tournament. And when I kind of watched this video, I thought, okay, Ludwig isn't going to be diving into the world of League of Legends now. This is something that he was quite literally dragged into by Mr. Beast. And if Mr. Beast approaches you and said, hey, I want you to play in a League of Legends tournament, you say yes. You just don't tell him no. But the saga continues, and he ended up playing in another League of Legends tournament recently. And Ludwig hasn't made a video on this yet. I don't know if he plans to, but this YouTube channel where they kind of post some VODs of Ludwig shared this full VOD of him participating in the tournament. And you don't have to look too deep into this to see how his performance kind of went. So just looking into this first game, scrolling through a little bit, he's 1-3. How does he end up finishing the game? This is actually someone else's POV. But if you just kind of scroll through these games, you see he did not have the greatest of performances here either. So in his 2 showings in the League of Legends scene so far, the Mr. Beast and Ninja tournament didn't do all too well. And this tournament recently didn't do all too well either. And one thing I do want to point out that's going to be important later, he played support in the first tournament and he played jungle in this tournament. So like I said, Ludwig hasn't come out and made a video yet about this tournament, but he did mention it in this video here. So I'll let him explain.
God damn. And then I wanted to play really bad because I want to get better at League of Legends and then do another Riot event and play with Tyler1 and make him proud. I have a dream of doing that. So I asked Emmy, I was like, are there any other team slots available? And then she was like, yeah, I don't think that's weird. That's not, I thought it was like if someone did that to me and I was running like a Fortnite event, I'd be like, oh yeah, for sure.
So, what we now know is this one-time tournament that he played in with Mr. Beast and Ninja was not a one-time thing, actually. It wasn't a fluke thing. Ludwig was truly embarrassed by his performance, and I think what Tyler1 said to him kind of got to him a bit, and he wants to be able to improve a little bit. And at the time of the first tournament, he was level 17. If you look at his OP.GG now, he's level 35. He has been grinding away a little bit. I mean, he hasn't played in 20 days or so, and maybe this was practice for the tournament that he was in recently, but he didn't get the opportunity to show Tyler1 what he's made of in this most recent tournament, so I don't think we've seen the end of Ludwig playing League of Legends quite yet. So, this is all just to say, today I'm going to be coaching Ludwig. I'm going to be giving him some tips and tricks and some pointers to try to help him not only be a better League of Legends player, but also hopefully one day achieve his goal of playing alongside Tyler1 again, something that I've done before, and showing what he's worth and making Tyler1 proud. And in order to do so, we're going to be going back and looking at the original event that he played in. Because again, he played support in this event. I'm a support main. So I'm going to be looking through the footage where we can see Ludwig's play from the support position, giving him some tips and tricks, and just coaching him and making him a better player, hopefully. We'll see what we can do. Now, this is going to be a bit difficult because we're watching the VOD review, and it's going to show snippets of everybody playing the game at the same time, but we'll try to focus in on Ludwig whenever we can see him. First things first, though, I just have to say, Thresh is a very, very difficult champion, and I understand Ludwig doesn't have a whole lot of experience playing League of Legends as a whole. Maybe he had some experience on Thresh beforehand. Maybe he played Thresh just because his teammates told him to. But my first piece of advice to Ludwig: never play Thresh ever again in your life. And this has nothing to do with your performance in this game. I don't think he's going to go on to play a great game. I mean, we'll go on to see. But what I do know about Thresh is he's one of the more difficult champions in the game. He's a very difficult mechanical champion, and it takes a lot of time and hours to play this champion at a high level. And I understand he's a busy man. He's probably not going to have enough time to invest into playing this game and perfecting this champion. So just don't do it. Play something that's more simple. Play something like an Enchanter. If you really want to impress Tyler one day, play something like Nami. You just point and click on him. You make him stronger. He does all the work, but you get the assists at the end of the day, and it makes you look good. If you do want to try to be a little bit more flashy, play something with some engaged potential. You could play something like Leona. Very simple combo. You press E, you Q them with a point and click stun. You press R on top of that. Something like Blitzcrank. It's just a straight line. You pull them. That's a good way to engage. What I'm mainly trying to say here is never play Thresh. Dumb down your champion pool a little bit. You are a beginner. I think I saw you were like level 35 or 37 or something like that. Don't try to play these super difficult high mechanical champions. Now, here's something I was able to pick up when looking at the bottom side of the map. You can't necessarily see it because they don't focus in on it. I think they might cut to it in a second here. But what we do notice, Ludwig is down in the bot lane by himself. So what you want to try to do, and it can get a little awkward when you're playing support because you don't have as much gold income. You're limited to just your support item where your ADC has the ability to last 8 minions, and so they're going to have a lot more gold than you. It looks like early on in this game, we're only not even 4 minutes in, you guys got chunked out a little bit, and Doublelift wanted to recall, go back to base, and spend what little gold he had. Ludwig, at this time, decided to stay on the map, and so much to the point that he's getting completely zoned away from this wave. He is essentially wasting his time here. He is not soaking up any XP. He's not getting any gold. He is standing AFK in lane, not accomplishing anything, actually just throwing out abilities, which even if he does land, he's not going to be able to do anything to capitalize on this. So what he should have been doing here is recalling at the same time of his ADC. Again, it could get a little awkward, especially this early on into the game. If you fall behind and you don't have a lot of gold to buy anything, it feels awkward to recall, but it's best to keep tempo with your ADC. So you guys always want to try to get on and off the map at the exact same time, even if you only had enough for boots or cloth armor, or if you just go back and heal up, get your mana back, and get a control ward, that's fine. Even though that seems awkward and it seems like you're wasting time, it's more effective than staying on the map in the bot lane by yourself, getting no gold, no XP. So they're going to cut to the bot lane in a second here, and it's not going to be super exciting. Nothing crazy is going to happen, but there are a couple small things that I want to point out. Small things can go a long way. First things first, you don't want to ever throw abilities out just for the sake of throwing abilities out, because you might think of it as, oh, I missed my ability, no harm there. But having an ability on cooldown allows the enemy team to then walk up and punish you. So you are actually putting yourself at risk by missing an ability. So you're going to see a Q here from Ludwig in a second here that's going to go straight into the minion wave. Didn't really have an angle anyways. You just need to be more patient with that. And it's not because you are afraid that you're going to miss it and not get a kill. It's because you're afraid you're going to miss it and then they're going to be able to walk up and get a kill on you guys. So that's one thing. The other thing that I want to point out here is you always want to try to keep at the same level. You want to keep a line essentially with your ADC. So here, as I'll kind of point out, they are this distance from Doublelift, and he is all the way back here. And what that means is if they were to go on Doublelift, he is not immediately in range to help out Doublelift or turn or peel or do anything like that. So essentially, you want to try to keep two things in mind. One, you want to try to stay at an even line with your ADC, and you also want to try to keep a triangle between you, your ADC, and the enemy. And that just means that you're going to be in a position at all times where you're close enough to get to the enemy, you're close enough to get to your ADC. So in a situation like this, where they're stacked up here, I would like to see Ludwig somewhere right around here. That way it creates this triangle. If they go on him, he's right here to assist. If Doublelift wants to engage, he's right here to assist. And he's hanging way too far back in the lane. And I don't know if that's because abilities are on cooldown and that's why he backs up, or he's just in a bad habit of moving too far up and too far back. but at all times, just try to keep that even line with your ADC. There's the Q that we see that misses, and then I think he's going to back up in a second here, play way too safe. Also, using your Lantern like that, not something that we ever necessarily want to do. Our Lantern is a very important ability that we want to keep up at all times in case of an emergency. That's not something that we use for just a small shield in the lane phase or as a way to gather souls. We just walk the 2 seconds over there and pick them up ourselves. And I did kind of misspeak earlier. I was a little bit ahead of the time. There's the Q right to the mini wave. Just wanted to make sure I'd show that as well. And as we see, as soon as he misses that and hits the Q into the mini wave, he's walking backwards instead of keeping that even line with his ADC, which allows the enemy team the ability to walk up and kind of punish double lift a little bit. Another thing that you can utilize in this particular matchup of Thresh into Leona, you kind of see him do it there, not to the most effective use, but Leona's E does try to drag herself to the enemy that she tags onto. As Thresh, if you're standing really close to your ADC, you can actually flay the Leona away, which prevents her from getting right on top of your ADC and then being able to stun them with their Q. So that's another mechanic that we'll kind of pay close attention to as the game progresses. If he's able to stand close enough to his ADC or his allies in general and try to push the Leona away. Another thing is Thresh is a huge counter into Zac, so that's another thing we'll pay attention to. Zac relies on his E as a way to engage. Thresh just has to point and click on top of him and flay him away, and it completely destroys any potential engage. So here we see Ludwig dying for the first time. Unfortunately, the camera cuts here way too late, and I don't think they end up showing your replay, so don't really get the opportunity to critique anything there. If I had to point out anything, the minion wave is super stacked up on the red side, so you don't necessarily want to be fighting in the middle of a minion wave at this stage in the game. Even though they are just minions this early on in the game, they do a lot of damage. If you attack the enemy in the minion wave will then attack you. So if I had to guess, maybe that's what went wrong, but don't really know for sure. Now, I understand the focus in this video is to take a look at Ludwig, but I didn't even realize that in the same game, Mr. Beast was also going to be playing support. If you guys in the future want to see me coach Mr. Beast a little bit, I think he actually focuses on League of Legends quite a bit these days. He's mentioned even coming out and buying his own team. If you guys want to see me coach him one day, let me know down in the comment sections below. Maybe we can work something out. Now this is a very small thing. Obviously here we see double lift recalling at the last second, which means that there probably was some communication that they wanted to get off the map or that they felt the dive was coming. This just goes back to what I was saying earlier. Want to keep tempo with your ADC. If your ADC wants to get off the map, you want to get off the map at the same time. If double lift was completing his recall and Ludwig hadn't even started his, they're definitely not on the same page there, and it just makes it so that it's a really easy dive for the enemy team. So on and off the map at the same time, that's always the goal. Alright, we're going to see some action in a second here. Don't really know what happens because it cuts a little bit late, and by the time they do cut here, he's already half HP. Double's actually doing a pretty good job of trading. I just think it's a little bit too late. So this seems like a positioning error a bit. He's just simply too far up. Again, you don't want to stand too far behind your ADC, but you also don't want to stand too far back. They, again, cut a little bit too late. I don't have the ability to kind of control where they're focusing on. This is just a VOD review, but if I had to guess, that's a positioning error. Just standing a little bit too far up, getting poked out, and then letting Leona engage on him without flaying her away. Now here's one thing I want to point out. As a support, you always want to try to get into a habit of roaming, and the easiest way to do so is anytime you're coming out of base, what you'll do is instead of walking straight down to the bot lane, which I think he's done pretty much every single time up to this point in the game, try to take a path that leads you towards the river through your own jungle. That gives you the ability to link up with your jungler, do dragon, invade their bot side, potentially go mid and try to assist there. It just gives you the ability to do a lot of different things, and you might end up not really doing anything, just dropping some wards and heading down bot. But that's more effective than just going down bot and doing nothing, because, I mean, they're not showing it right now, but he's most likely kind of just sitting there watching double lift pushing the wave, especially if you do know where the enemy team is. If you know that they're on a reset, as they are here, they're still coming back to lane. Double lift is perfectly fine by himself in the bot lane. He doesn't need Ludwig there with him, so this is a great time for him to be elsewhere on the map, potentially looking mid, because it looks like Yasuo might be shoving this wave in a little bit. Maybe he can link up with the jungler and potentially look mid together. But again, if you don't even roam at all, you don't give yourself any of these possibilities. So again, you might roam and get nothing accomplished other than some wards down, but by roaming, you open up a lot of different doors. This is getting a bit repetitive to say at this point, but they do cut to the bot lane a bit late, and shocker, shocker, Ludwig is dead. No coaching there. Don't really know what happened, but he's 0-4. At this point, my only piece of advice to you, this is something I try to live by, always start the game with your intentions of being, I'm going to be the reason my team wins. And if things start not going your way necessarily, then your goal becomes, I'm going to be the reason my team doesn't lose. So at this point, Ludwig is really, really struggling. You should not try to be the hero at any point at this point. You are just looking to exist in the game without setting your team further behind. We'll see if he's able to do that. Now here's an example of when you don't want to be roaming. Your jungler is just now coming out of base. Your top laner's top. Your mid laner is under their tower, so they don't have prio. Your ADC is still bot. He is in the river here by himself. If you are going to roam by yourself at this stage of the game, it's okay, but get some very shallow vision, which just means we're not trying to get too greedy. We're not trying to overextend. Think of it this way. When the game starts, the river is kind of the neutral zone. You can go there, the enemy team can go there, but you guys don't necessarily have control over the river. As the game progresses, though, if one team gets a lead or the other team gets a lead, then that river kind of becomes more controlled by one team or the other. At this stage of the game, I would say, considering how poorly the bot lane has played, namely Ludwig, they don't have the lead. They don't have the ability to kind of walk into the river confidently, whereas the other team does. So you just want to get shallow vision. You don't need to greed for vision in the river or even in the enemy jungle. Like this bush here on the backside of your red buff or even the dragon from over the wall. That's good shallow vision, and that gets the job done without getting too greedy. You could potentially even look for wards later, deeper in the jungle if you have your team, but especially with no prio mid, no prio bot, your top laner is top without TP, your jungler is just coming out of base, not a good time to roam there. He ends up burning his flash, and Ninja kind of gets himself killed because he's roaming over trying to help there. Unfortunately, I already watched what happens next, and it's not pretty, I'll tell you that much. That hook just really hurts to watch. That flay makes it all that much worse. Let's go back and talk about what he could have done differently. Now, this is a piece of advice that you could apply to many, many different champions, and it all kind of just boils down to, how can I make my life as easy as possible? So let's look at it this way. When you have Thresh's Q and you have Thresh's E, which ability is easier to land? I would argue his E is much easier to land. His Q has a windup, it has to travel a much further distance, the enemy team has time to react and sidestep or flash or dash away, whatever it may be. Your Flay, on the other hand, it's almost melee range, not quite, and it's almost instantaneous, so you could kind of swipe the enemy team into you without giving them any time to react. Now, this is actually very good positioning from Ludwig. He's walking up at the same time as his ADC. Here's that triangle that we are looking for. So if they go onto double lift, he's here to react. If they were to try to, as they are here to try to go on the enemy team, he's here to react as well. His jungler's walking up. This is beautiful. Up to this point, the execution is just what goes wrong. And you want to, like I said, you want to make things as simple as possible. So with this positioning, he can simply walk up and flay them back into his team. It makes his life very, very easy. Once you flay them, then you can use your Q. Just to throw out another champion to kind of give a comparison, if you're playing someone like Blitzcrank, what ability is easier to use? Your Q, which is, has to travel a certain distance and is a little bit quicker than Thresh's Q, but does still allow them some time to sidestep or dodge or flash or whatever away. Or Blitzcrank's E, which is an ability you activate, and it makes it so that your next auto attack simply knocks them up in the air. Obviously, the answer is going to be the ability that's instantaneous and knocks them up, and it's not even a skill shot. So when you're playing Blitzcrank, you just simply, if you have the ability to, if you're close enough, you knock them up with your E, and then you combo that with your Q. It makes it a lot easier to land both abilities. Same thing kind of applies with Thresh. If you're in range to use your Flay, you flay them first, then use your Q. And that's the first mistake that happens here, is Ludwig leads with his Q. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that it probably would have missed even if she didn't flash, because as you can see, she flashed here and this hook's going this way. So just a bad hook in general. You typically want to be, leading your skill shots in the direction that they're walking, especially the lower ranks you go. I mean, Emaru's actually a very good player. Mr. Beast, I don't know much about him, but he seems decent. But for the most part, try to aim in front of them, because until you get to higher elos, better players, they aren't going to be sidestepping as much. And just one more factor here, the fact that they're next to a wall makes it so that sidestepping is even more difficult, because their path options, there's not a lot of them. They pretty much have to go this direction. So you could have even predicted this flash necessarily. That's not needed to say. All he needed to do here, though, was walk up and flay and then land the flash. And so kind of botches it there with the Q, and then the flay away doesn't really make sense here. This might have just been him panicking after missing the Q and feeling a bit embarrassed. But obviously the better play is to flay them back into you because you want them to be closer to you, not closer to their tower. A lot to break down there. Hopefully I made that all clear. Hopefully you guys were able to learn something from that.
Not only did he not get the play, I think he played in the wrong direction there, Flowers.
They kind of pointed it out there too. It happens. Probably just unlucky. Who knows? Either way, probably should have just led with the flay to begin with. Let's see how this flay plays out. Let me rewind a little bit because what happens here? So one thing that you want to be able to do, if possible, is try to layer your CC with your teammates. And if you're someone like Ludwig and you're really struggling this game to land your hooks, what you can rely on is your teammates to CC them first, which puts them in a location that you know they're going to be stuck in for at least a second or so, and then you can land your hook. And lucky for him, he has his Wukong here, who's going to go in on the Victor and knock him up. Now, maybe at this point, again, this is a couple months back, Ludwig probably doesn't have the greatest knowledge of the game or different champions, so maybe he didn't know how Wukong works, and he didn't know that Wukong was going to go in and knock this person up in place, but this should have been a guaranteed hook that he could have layered with the Wukong ulti, but it goes wide a bit. And, you know, that's kind of nitpicking because even if this does land, this seems like a very bad fight, as we could already see. It's a 3v4. The Wukong's probably going to die in a second here, and even if he does land the hook, they probably don't get anything in return, but that is something that he can do in the future, trying to layer his CC with his teammates if he knows, hey, I have a Wukong, they're going to ult, so I know that they're going to be right here. Or, hey, I have a Sejuani, after she ults, I know they're going to be right here. Something like that. Now, here's the thing, like I said, I don't want to focus too much on this because I kind of talked about this earlier. As a support, you don't want to be bot lane by yourself, or in any lane, really, by yourself, just standing there. It's not your job as an ADC, or as a support to catch waves and farm them up. If his goal here is to freeze the wave for his ADC, I suppose that's fine, but instead of sitting in the lane throwing hooks at the enemy team that's not going to result in anything, he could have taken this time to roam elsewhere and get vision. For example, we see here on the map that his Wukong is moving towards the top side of the map. He could have met up with his Wukong and got vision around this Rift Herald, and that at least would have gave them the vision to potentially make a play around the Rift Herald. Mr. Beast is actually doing a great job here. He knows that his team is probably going to be focusing on Rift next, so he's here already getting vision. I wish Ludwig would have been here already. Instead of going bot, he could have went top and got this vision first, and then Mr. Beast would have been kind of fighting to get some vision back. At this point, though, it's all Mr. Beast's vision in this jungle, and Ludwig has nothing down here. Alright, looks like we do have a fight breaking out here. I'm going to let this play out first, and then maybe we'll go back and break it down. That's a good hook there. That's a decent flay. That's a decent ulti. Hey, not too bad there. I also like the lantern at the beginning of it to try to help his ADC reposition if he needed to. Overall, a pretty solid fight from Ludwig. He gets here a little late. This is kind of, you know, I guess maybe just not understanding where the play is. Just looking at the map, mid tower's gone, top tower's gone, no dragons up for any time soon. So Rift Herald has kind of been the main focus for a little bit here. I don't know where he was before. If he was sitting, it looks like he was sitting mid lane by himself. Again, not something you want to do. But he does get here. You know, better late than never. He gets here. His ADC's in trouble. Throws out the lantern. That's not too bad at all. I will say he was in position for a flay here again. So again, instead of landing this hook, which is a nice hook, he could have just flayed first and then hooked, which would have made things a little bit easier. Not a bad flay. Not a bad ulti. Not a bad fight whatsoever. So maybe at this point of the game, 18 minutes in, this is the first game of the day, maybe starting to warm up a little bit. Again, could have made things a little bit easier on himself by just getting to the fight sooner. He could have been there potentially to, you know, when his ADC was getting into trouble, to flay people away, set up his ulti, hook and stuff like that beforehand. And then the fight might have been a bit cleaner, but better late than never. All right, looks like they're setting up a bait bush here. Didn't quite see the top angle to see Tryndamere walking up. Ideally, if they are looking for a pick and they have that bait bush, the person with the engage should be the first person to do anything there. I don't know if his teammates got a little antsy there or if Ludwig was, you know, a little slow to pull the trigger, but they do get the pick and they look barren. Skipping ahead a bit, looks like they might contest. Let's see how Ludwig plays this one. I think they're probably just going to give this, so probably no action coming here. But again, when it comes to a bait bush, if you have the benefit of, you know that they don't have vision of you and you see them walking up, You want the person with the engage to go first, because if the first thing that hits them is CC, you're probably going to hit them. It looked like in that situation, the first thing that hit them was maybe double lift dashing forward as Lucian and just auto-attacking them. He's not going to react, immediately, but since it's not something that's slowing him or stunning him or locking him in place, he is able to run away. Luckily, they still got the kill, but ideally, you do want the CC to come out first. All right, so shortly after this Baron play, this just seems like kind of bad team comms. They're just staying in their jungle, overstaying way too long. I'm not going to necessarily blame anything here on Ludwig. This is just bad team comms. Double lift is on a recall. Tyler1 is a little split up. He's trying to salvage this, but this just seems like maybe some of the amateurs on the team were not on the same page, and looks like they're going to throw the game a bit here, even though things have not been looking too bad. They did have a lead top side. The jungler hasn't been playing too bad. Doublelift was able to pick up 5 kills, so they were still in this game. And they had a 1,000 gold lead until this point, but this should be a free Baron for them and probably gonna send them back pretty far. Alright, so even though Mr. Beast's team has Baron, and it looks like they're prepping a dragon, they look like they're still looking to contest. It's actually a really good hook. Let's see, this fight's not going to go too well, but let's look back at it and see what he could have potentially done differently. Actually, you know what? Tyler1's huge. That actually did not go too bad. Let's see what he could have done differently here, potentially. So again, I don't even necessarily know if I was on this team, I'd probably be telling my team to back out. If we know that they're probably stronger than us right now, they have Baron, we don't necessarily want to contest this dragon, we want to be pushing mid. That's all, story for another day. Let's just focus on Ludwig at the moment, though. This is a good hook. That he goes in. I would say maybe the only thing there is, I don't know if you necessarily go in. What you can do as Thresh is if you land a hook, you can simply walk up and flay them, which, still allows you to get the full engage off without throwing yourself in the middle of the team, especially because, they are further behind at this point. I don't think they're as strong. And especially since he's, he was 0-6 going to this fight, he had 2 items and Moby boots. He's not necessarily super tanky. He's probably going to get himself killed by going in. It might be worth it if they're able to one-shot the victor, which it seems like they were kind of able to. But I do think that if you go back here in this moment, he probably, instead of, he lands this hook and he's walking away. If he lands this hook and walks towards him, he can just flay him without having to reactivate his Q, which throws him all the way over here. Instead, he could have still been positioned here and dragged Yasuo into his team a little bit more. So not only does it bring Yasuo closer to his team, it also prevents him from being closer to the enemy team. That's one thing he could have done potentially different here. But at the end of the day, if it is in fact a 1-for-1 and they're able to, trade support for the mid laner, that's going to be worth. And the rest of this fight isn't necessarily Ludwig's fault. It's more or less this huge combo that comes out here and one-shots, the jungler and the mid laner, making things really tough, and it's left to Doublelift and Tyler1 to try to salvage this fight. But again, that one thing you could have done differently, instead of dragging yourself into the team by reactivating your Q after landing it and running away, land it, walk towards them, flay them into your team. It's going to give you better positioning, and it's also going to give you better positioning on the person that you hooked. All right, we have another fight breaking out here. Ludwig's a little bit by himself. Again, I feel like Yasuo is playing way too aggressive here. I mean, you see Doublelift is able to recognize how far up Victor is by himself, just playing completely disrespectfully, and Doublelift is able to dash in on him. I wish Ludwig was able to recognize that this was way too aggressive by Yasuo, and instead of, running away and throwing the hook backwards, walk up and flay. I don't like to repeat myself, but it really is the most effective method if you have the positioning, or if you know that someone is, isolated or by themselves or playing way too far up. Just run at them. Make them burn their flash. Make them get scared. Make them run away before you throw that hook. And if they don't run away, if they continue to, hold their ground, you get the flay into the easy hook into the, the box. It just makes things a lot simpler on yourself. You don't always have to go for the max range hook. So it looks like they might be able to, kill the victor here, potentially. The Zonius kind of stalls things out a little bit. He does die anyway, so yeah, he was overextended. The Zonius was able to keep him alive for a bit longer until his team collapsed. But again, if you're able to recognize someone is by themselves, playing way too far up, run at them. Especially at this point in the game, things are not looking too good for your team. You got to get a little bit more aggressive and pull the trigger on things if you think someone is out of position. All right, the rest of this fight is playing out. Ludwig is way too low. He's trying to stay relevant, which I respect. And hey, honestly, credit to him for staying alive. I think even like back here, he's running in. I don't think he has anything to offer here. I probably would have just recalled and tried to get back on the map, and hopefully one of your team survives. That's just me, though. Got to give him credit for actually sticking around and trying to help out his team. It's just, at that point, you're kind of just sticking around and not able to offer anything. And by the way, this is kind of the, the whole narrative of this whole thing, the reason we're doing it. Just look at Tyler One's reaction here. This man is devastated and cannot believe what he is seeing. Now again, I'm nitpicking at this point. I would like to see him positioned next to his carries at this stage of the game, especially because Zach is always looking to engage. They have Zach to engage, they have Leona to engage. Both of those people, he can negate their engage by simply staying next to his ADCs and flaying them away if they try to use Zach or Leona E in. He's just a little bit off misposition. And I also, again, nitpicking here, I don't love this. I don't know what the voice comms are on his team. I don't necessarily think this is his fault, but if this is him doing it on his own limb, then that is his fault. I would say at this stage of the game, you're looking for them to push into you. They have Dragon Soul at this point. They are much stronger. You want them to come to you and potentially kind of turtle under your tower and wait for them to make a mistake potentially. Or if they are going to make a play around Baron, you let them take a little bit of damage and then you can test it. But what you don't want to do is give them an open 5v5 fight when they are stronger than you. And by looking for a hook here, even if he lands this, they lose this fight. By missing this, he's stationary for a second, which gives them the opportunity to walk up. They do, but they don't actually engage. So a couple of risky things there. At the same time, though, like I said, I don't know what the voice comms are. Tyler One's actually walking up a little bit here, so maybe he's just following his team at this point. Tyler One is killed by himself. I'll honestly blame that more on Tyler than Ludwig or anybody. At this point, it's a 4v5. Your only goal is to run. Looks like Ludwig is, trying to frontline for his team, trying to play the hero, using CC to try to keep them away. I think at that point, you kind of just got to let Tyler One die and run away. But I understand, if you're someone like Ludwig, you're level 17, you don't have a whole lot of experience on this player. If you see someone like Tyler One, who's literally the face of League of Legends, running in, his thought process is probably, I'm going to try to save this guy. So, I understand Ludwig may be making a lot of mistakes this game, simply, based on the fact that he doesn't necessarily know this game all that well, but he feels like he has to follow along with his teammates and listen to their calls and try to keep them alive at any point in time. So, as a support too, you always feel like you're a little obligated to try to keep your team alive, and you do just have to learn as a support sometimes if your teams make a mistake, if your teammates make a mistake, if they're not positioned correctly, you do just have to let them die and try to salvage the game. As you see here, Tyler One kind of gets caught a little bit or overextends or is feeling a little bit too confident. If he dies, that's fine. It's a 4v5 and it makes the game very difficult. But if you try to go in and save him, now you're looking at a 3v5. Now you're looking at a 2v5. Now you're looking at a 1v5 or an ace. They take Baron. Now they're going to run to Elder. It makes the game a lot more difficult. If someone gets caught out, even when you're playing support, even if it's your ADC, sometimes you got to let them die. Now, I got to believe this is going to be the game here. At this point, this is a match that's made for content, right? We got a lot of big name players here. They're playing for fun. They're not necessarily playing to win or to, play the most strategic game. I don't know if they should necessarily be just contesting them this often, but got to think with Elder coming up, this is going to be the last fight of the game. I would assume Red Team wins the fight. They get Elder. It's not going to look too good, but let's take a look at Ludwig if they focus on him at all and see how he's able to play this fight out. I would say the main way they get into this fight is with Wukong engaging. It's not necessarily on Thresh, but neither of them engage, and they just give the Elder, so that's pretty tough. At this point, since they didn't contest Elder, they probably just run it down, I assume, and it's going to be pretty easy, especially with Ninja getting caught there. Alright, Ludwig, I don't want to point out the fact that you are a support by yourself this many times in one video, but I got to point it out. You just have to kind of think about it, and, what are you accomplishing here? Your teammates in base, Ninja's dead, T1 is dead, you're sitting by your tower, they have Elder Dragon, they have Infernal Soul. I think Baron's probably worn out at this point. But this is just not a good position for you. If you've ever seen that meme of, like the white girl with the 4 guys sitting, like standing behind her while she's sitting on the couch, this is kind of what this image here reminds me of a little bit. You're just a very vulnerable little girl right here, and it's not going to go too well for you. You get slowed, you get jumped on, they add the misfortune ulti on top of it just to add insult to injury. It's just, that's not what you want to be doing. Now, I understand a lot of times, especially in tournaments, you know, you're probably a little nervous, you're probably shaking a little bit, you're probably sweating a little bit, and I know what it's like to have T1 in your ear telling you how terrible of a player and human being that you are. But you just got to understand that this is not the place to be. This is not the play to make. And I feel like even Ludwig, if he were to go back and look at this VOD review, he'd probably be able to recognize himself that this was a mistake, and it's hard to recognize that, you know, in real time, but got to live and learn from your mistakes. So hopefully, if he does continue on this path of playing League of Legends, playing in tournaments, trying to make T1 proud, he doesn't make that mistake again.
Team Ninja, they're working on Nexus turrets.
And I think that's going to wrap it up for Ludwig. He's not going to be alive to see his Nexus fall. Very impressive 0, 9, and 8 on the game. You know what? Overall, I expected worse, but there are a couple more games. I believe this is a 3-game series that they play, or I don't know if it's a best of 3 or if they play 3 games in all. Maybe he improves over the next couple games. I haven't watched them yet, but I might. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys found this funny or helpful or enjoyable, whatever it may have been, and you guys want to see more videos like this, whether I'm coaching Ludwig in his other games, Mr. Beast, or anybody really, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you made it this far and you did enjoy the video, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of this one, though. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace. Oh, and Ludwig, if you want some more coaching, 1v1 coaching, hit me up. I'm a big fan.